Hello everyone, this is my reaction to yesterday's Star Citizen, the IAE show, episode 3. CRG was talking about the flight model.
And it's time to address the Idris in the room here, master modes. We'd been talking about master modes for quite some time. We've been building it up as the big savior of the spaceship combat experience. It released to mixed reviews at times. You know, some people are for it, some people are less than for it. We'll just say that kindly.
I find this very interesting that CRG finally addresses Master Mode. Yogi and others made it look like, hey, it's the best thing ever happening to Star Citizen. I guess all the threads on Spectrum and Reddit that are not exactly talking positive about Master Modes made them do this now. And I'm sure they lost a lot of money because of Master Modes. I cannot put my finger on it. I don't have numbers. Sorry.
The big thing around Master Modes is that it's never was designed to be a static piece of development. We always wanted to make sure that we were adding in new systems as they came along that then influenced those design decisions that we made at the time.
Okay, first problem, CRG is still talking like, we are just starting, we are a small indie dev, we are in year 1, we are trying to figure things out. Richard, this is a more than $730 million project in year 13, and you still have no idea what your flight model should be. Things like flight model and ship combat should be nailed down in year 2 or 3. CRG shouldn't run around like headless chicken, realizing master modes was a terrible idea. Okay, now we are going for the next thing.
And I think two big pieces of feature work that we're going to be bringing to Star Citizen that's going to have a drastic change on how we implement master modes is going to be crafting and quantum boost. So right now with master modes itself, we have obviously the two master modes, SCM and NAV. A big thing is that we're going to actually be demoting or converting those modes from master modes to operator modes.
Okay, master mode is dead, long live operator mode. I really lost track. Is this now the 8th, 9th, 10th flight model we have in Star Citizen?
What that inherently means is that we're still going to have a mode that is dedicated to fighting and having combat. There is going to be a mode that's dedicated to your quantum. But we're going to be removing some of the fail-safes, restrictions, yes, that had when you're switching between these modes. We're going to be moving towards one cohesive speed between all operator modes. That speed is going to be more akin to what you'd imagine SCM speeds are now. But there's two big, huge caveats that come into that. First off is crafting. So crafting will allow you to upgrade your ship and to tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you want to have combat at higher speeds, if you have a tier 5 ship and you have the best thrusters and you've specialized, you've bought an interceptor ship, that will be more applicable to those types of ships.
I love the idea of crafting in games, but I don't think you should lock best ship behind crafting. This sounds like a terrible idea, and only the big orgs will have the best ships with the best thrusters. Also, since this is CRG, getting the materials for crafting will be slow, tiresome, and very, very time consuming. Yeah, I really think locking the best components behind crafting is a terrible idea. Now you might say you can always buy those from other players who are crafting. No, this will be very expensive and there will be a very limited supply.
So that gives people options to choose, like I want to have this type of gameplay versus this type of gameplay. Having that cohesive, unified speed, the one thing that we really need to address is this kind of like nav flight mode that is kind of, it sits in this very odd position in terms of you get out of an LZ and you're flying up to the space station, in atmosphere, your speed is really closer to SCM speeds anyway. You're not flying at 1,000 meters a second. You can pick up start a bounty hunter mission now, be sent to another planet, and then the closest quantum point to that POI might be 500 kilometers away. And that means that, as we add more dense POIs, that's going to only exacerbate this situation because we can't have quantum markers everywhere. And when we start to add more space exploration and more missions towards the different guilds that we're operating on, where you're having to go into deep space and go into these large distances, you don't want to be in a position where that's taking such a huge amount of time. We want you to be spending more time doing the mission than flying there.
We can't have quantum markers everywhere. Well, you could have a secondary set of markers, call them whatever, that are way closer to your objectives. And I find it very funny that CRG finally starts to realize that Star Citizen is time sink galore. Yes, it's a space game. I shouldn't be able to teleport all over a system. Some things should take time. This is fine. However, right now, the ratio between preparation, immersive elevator and metro rides, immersive AFK quantum traveling, and doing something that is actually fun is like 10 to 1. 10 minutes preparation, 10 minutes boring AFK rides to 1 minute of fun.
This is where Quantum Boost comes in. Now, the way that Quantum Boost works is kind of, it connects your flight speeds to your quantum travel. So quantum travel is for flying millions of kilometers away when you have a specific quantum marker that you're flying towards. Then you've got your flight speeds, which should be, you know, say sub 20 kilometers, where you're flying around, exploring on the planet, or fighting at a POI, or doing a bounty hunting. But anywhere above that, we want to kind of accelerate that process of that navigation. And Quantum Boost goes all the way up to your top speed of SCM, or top speed of our flight mode, your current nav mode, all the way up to essentially a 10th of quantum travel speed.
This sounds a bit like Elite Dangerous, which is not a bad idea. I am very happy if CRG takes inspiration and learns from other games.
You have this spectrum of speeds that allow you to navigate the large spaces in our game, but also then still stay true to some of the intentions that we delivered with Master Modes.
Master Modes we talked a lot about, and the combat side broadly staying the same. The nav side that was the limiting factor, we often said, like, it's too fast, but not fast enough. The amount of times we watch new players go into nav, go towards a station, and then we'd be sat there going, they've not stopped in time. So Quantum Boost was always supposed to be that bridge gap, and without it, we were left with this sort of nav mode that didn't quite do what we wanted. And it also, because it's quantum and it's creating a bubble around your ship, allows us less friction in the traversal, because you go in quantum, you come out quantum, you don't have to apply all this G-force.
The rules of physics
are different because you're not physically hurtling at that speed, you're wrapping a bubble of time and space around yourself. So you come out, you can stop dead, you're not having that expanse moment where you're all being ripped apart from the G-force. So you see that space station coming towards you, you stop, you stop.
The one limitation that we are retaining is the fact that you can't have your quantum drive enabled and also your shields. And ultimately, that's a binary decision. Operator modes will start off as the default configuration that we've set in terms of the controls, in terms of the MFDs and what you're casting onto your HUD, in terms of your resource network presets. But that doesn't stop you from then going in and customizing it. We're providing an initial, hey, this is what we think is a good default setting. But then it's up to the players then to customize what they want on their cast, what they want on the MFDs, and then they have options to them. And they shouldn't have this constant switching modes to gain access to certain operator modes. You know, we're removing some of that friction.
This sounds very promising. One of the problems with the current master mode is it feels very artificial to switch between those modes.
And through all of this, because that binary distinction is between modes, you have to be in this mode or this mode, and there's all these very strict rules between those modes, you keep your weapons through all this. So this now becomes a more tactical decision in combat. But if you need that sudden burst of speed, either to get away from something or to catch up to something, you make the choice. You sacrifice your shields, certainly, but you can still bring your weapons to bear instead of get there, and the second you're out.
Yes, 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 yes. One of the big problems I had with master modes is you're switching to nav mode and suddenly your guns are gone. Why? I should still have my guns. At the very least, I should still have my ballistic physical weapons because they don't need energy. This is a step into the right direction.
And ultimately that is underpinned by your resource network engineering. So if you're on a single-seater ship, that's obviously at the pilot's behest. But also if you're on a larger multi-crew ship, you can then use the engineering terminal to be able to have those presets available to you.
And through the use of crafting to improve your components and of course your presets and quantum boost rather, you can get up to speeds that are approaching the current nav speed and stuff like that. So we're not taking that speed away. We're defaulting everything to a speed that is closer to today's SCM. And then giving the player choices in how and when they can get up to that speed without completely disabling everything.
I mean, ultimately, it allows us to keep the kind of the default. We're trying to move towards a balance across the game where you can start off easier and it gets harder. So we want the default to be open and compatible to lots of players, but then as you start to specialize and it becomes hard to master and you start to work in the different avenues of different professions that you like, that's where you can start to customize your ship. And I think there's a key takeaway or a key point to also make is that if you don't want to craft, if you don't want to go down that route because you just want to shoot ships and be a combat pilot, or you just want to be a miner or a space trucker, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still gain access to this because player trading is going to be something that allows players to gain access to these components and ships without having to go through some of the grind that they have, and obviously they're now reaping the benefits of that, but you have lots of choice.
Again, I don't think you should lock the best ships, the best components behind crafting. Crafting those high-level components, high-level ships will be very, very time-consuming. And telling us, oh no, you don't have to craft, you can just buy those from other players. Do you have any idea how expensive this will be? I guess only the really big orgs can have all the logistics to craft those items. So yeah, you have to spend a fortune. And what about AMD? Real money trading? I'm waiting for the day when you see tier 5 fighters on eBay for like $2,000.
Obviously, there isn't one prototypical Star Citizen player. Developing a system that's going to please everybody is an impossible task. We can only work towards our goals and our vision for what we want this to be and hope it applies to as many people as possible. What I like about this is that you can never go wrong with putting the choice in the player's hands. At any given situation, when you're going to want your speed, when you're going to want your shields, you'll always have your weapons from now on. So like this, just put those choices in the player's hands and let them let them decide for themselves. It's one of those things unique about Star Citizen is that we get to develop this, and then we don't have to wonder. We can put it into players' hands and get that feedback immediately and then take it in. I think there's a real chance for this to be the spaceship experience we've been working towards this whole time.
I think the big thing to take away from all the things that we've discussed is that none of these things are designed or implemented in isolation. And where we're trying to go is that, you know, when we talk about combat that is, say, not as fast as it was in previous updates, hopefully people understand we're doing that not just because we don't like fast combat, it's because we want to give players options to gain fast combat or gain slower combat depending on what choices they make with crafting or their purchases.
Again, bad idea. You will have players who have standard ships that are not exactly cheap, by the way, and you have players in big orgs that have all the best components, have tier 5 ships. No, please, don't go that route. I want crafting in Star Citizen, but don't lock the best items behind crafting. This will lead to a lot of tension. And trust me, CRG, you don't want this. And again, what about AMT? Real money trading.
Then it's on a scenario where, you know, capital warfare is, you know, you need to be able to use precision targeting, and that's why we developed that feature so that you can have good subcomponent targeting. And I think when you start to see some of this bigger picture come together and you start to see all of these individual pieces connect, you might not agree with it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. That's how we're trying to connect all these pieces together to create this experience that ultimately Chris is the one that is setting that vision, and we're trying to execute on that vision for Chris. And that is what we're trying to work towards, and hopefully people can start to see some of these pieces connect together and why some of these decisions have been made. And you know, and hopefully they enjoy it ultimately at the end of the day.
My thoughts? What Richard Tyler said sounds very promising and a step into the right direction, which of course isn't so hard to do because the current master mode are the worst flight model and ship combat we ever had in Star Citizen. The real elephant in the room is we are in year 13 and CRG is changing the flight model again. They call the new flight model now operator mode. Why should I believe CRT knows now how the flight model is supposed to be? Why do I get a feeling the flight model will change again in 1 or 2 years? Operator mode is now the 8, 9, 10th flight model, I think. Sorry, I lost track. In my opinion, CRT should go back to John Bridges' 3.0 flight model. You always had your guns and your shields, but if you used afterburner, you could only make very wide turns. So if you wanted to combat, you had to stay in SCM mode, but you could always pop afterburner to get away. Was John Bridges' pre-3.0 flight model perfect? Of course not, but it was much better than the current flight model, and it would be a good start. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye. Auf Wiedersehen.
What about working with Chris Roberts? How's that been?
You know, the word genius is bandied about in Hollywood, but it sticks to Chris Roberts like glue.
Hey, you're still here. You might want to join me on Twitter. My Twitter account is Camural_SC.